Chapter 18. Tuesday noon. Doreen went back to sorting, her mind and heart alight with joy. Yet she could feel everything rolling in her stomach, and a certain quarreling through her system, a tension, worried something might still go wrong before the experts took things into their possession. As she went through Nan's papers, a couple letters she added to the Ask Nan pile. Most of this last stack was junk, which Nan had printed off on various different medical conditions which didn't pertain to anything at this point, not Doreen's cold cases, not Nan's own health. Lots of the garbage pile was just pamphlets, religious pamphlets, like collecting anything that came in the mail too. Or maybe just not going through her mail every day. Doreen could see that. After a while, it would have accumulated, and Nan would have taken her growing pile of mail, and then finally shoved it on the shelf. So she could go through it later. Later, right. By the time Doreen got to that, she was tired. She sat down with a heavy thump and said, "Well, those shelves full of papers are done." John smiled, looked at the stack on the floor, and whistled. So most of it was garbage? She nodded as she swept up the stack of takeout menus off the table and dumped them on the floor into her trash pile. Most of it was garbage. "This stack is recipes," she said. "I'll put them on the cookbook shelf. This is my Ask Nan pile, stuff for Nan to go through if she cares, and stuff I have questions about with 2 letters I found on the top." She picked them up and said, "These letters are dated quite a while ago. I don't know what they are." She handed them to John and snagged the stack of recipes, moved them to the pantry shelf designated for them now, where they could stand between 2 larger recipe books, and then stared at the one wall of empty shelves with pride. She left the pantry for the small nearby alcove. "Now for the hutch under the printer," she said to herself as she dropped down, opened up the base of the hutch, and pulled out the big folders in there. She had no clue if any of this was valuable, but Scott was taking the hutch, and that would happen sooner rather than later. Considering the movers had already taken so many other pieces, she was surprised Scott hadn't come in after the hutch yet. It also meant the printer would have to sit on the floor, unless maybe a kitchen chair could hold it. She took a chair and moved the printer onto it, and then emptied the inside and the top of the hutch. With everything back on the kitchen table, she groaned and said, "Man, she was a collector." Just then Scott walked in, took one look at the hutch and crowed, "I was hoping you'd get to that." She smiled and said, "Go ahead and take it. I still have no place to put some of this stuff, but it's empty." He looked at it in admiration. "Looks like you've done a tremendous amount of clearing out. Anything valuable?" "An old English cookbook," she said. "I'm not sure about the rest of this stuff yet, and I just got into the contents of the hutch. I did all the bookshelves full of paper in the pantry first." Scott disappeared, then returned with 2 men. They carefully picked up the hutch and moved it into the living room. She looked at John, who was staring at the letters. "Do you know anything about them?" she said. "You're looking at them like they're important." "They are important, I think," John said, frowning, "but I'm not sure. They could be really good fakes." "They could be," she said. "I have no idea." Scott looked at her newest stacks on the kitchen table and asked, "What's all that?" "It's very different from the rest of the stuff you took off the shelves." "This was all in the hutch," she said to John. "Do you know anything about music?" He pulled his spectacles off his nose, and she opened up the leather folder to show sheets of music. He held out his hand and asked, "May I?" She handed it to him. "I think each of these is from a different musician, but I don't know. Nan tried to explain some of it to me, but it was a little confusing." John carefully removed all the sheet music from the folder in front of him and said, "Musician notes are here too." He read through some of it, flipping through the pages, and said, "I'm not a musician, but these all appear to be the unpublished works of somebody. I just don't know who this is." "I don't either," Doreen said, "and I don't even know if the music is any good." Just then, she caught sight of a piece of paper sticking out from inside the folder. She motioned to it and pulled it out. "Oh, look at that. It's a bill of sale. He opened it up, and together they read it. Interesting, he said. This isn't my field, but I do know somebody interested in this type of stuff. She burst out laughing at that. It's like you expert guys all know each other. When you think about it, he said, we all work for Christie's, so we get to know each other in our various fields. He looked at the 3 other matching envelopes. Are those leather folders also holding music? I'm not sure, she said. She opened the second one and nodded. And another bill of sale. Before you take any of this, she said, I want to scan all the music so I have a copy of it. I have no clue what this is, so I hate to see it leave my possession without knowing. I'll take a couple photos of the notes and some of the music, John said, and I'll send it to the music expert I know. He was already taking photos of various sheets. I'll leave it in your possession, unless it proves valuable. Good enough, she said. She went through the next 2 folders. All 4 of these contain music. She found a place on a pantry bookshelf near the bottom, where she could stack the folders. When you're done, we'll put them all there. He nodded and said, that's a good place to keep them for the moment. With those out of the way, she went back to the rest of the stuff. She opened a small box and found something like a paperweight in a small clear box. She held it out for John. Does this mean anything to you? He frowned and shook his head. I'll ask Agatha, Doreen said. She walked through the dining room, realizing the paintings were already gone. In the living room, everything was pretty well gone, just the 2 chairs she wasn't sure if Scott was taking or not. She headed out to the garage, almost crowing in delight to see it so empty. The men had the back of the moving truck wide open, and it was packed nearly full. She shook her head. Scott saw her and walked toward her. Hard to believe all this came out of the house, isn't it? I'm stunned. I'm really stunned. She held up the see-through box with a paperweight in it. Do you know anything about this? He frowned. Nope, doesn't mean anything to me. What about Agatha? Turning around, Scott pointed down the driveway. She's down there. They packed up several of the paintings, and they're putting them in her transport vehicle now. It was a panel van, and Doreen walked down to it. Agatha saw her coming, smiled, and said, We've got 2 more to pack up and then we're good. Wonderful, Doreen said. She held out the object in her palm. Do you know what this is? Agatha reached out a hand and studied it carefully. There's a piece of paper behind it. Using her nails, she pulled it out without having to remove the object from the box. It's a piece of rare crystal, hand-carved by a glassworker out of Venice. She frowned, carefully removed the crystal from the clear box, and held it up to the sunlight as a million colors exploded from the crystal. Everybody gasped. It's beautiful, Doreen said. Not only is it beautiful, it's been kept in pristine condition, Agatha said. This bill of sale and declaration of authenticity says, Italy 1842. Doreen just shook her head. I have no idea where Nan got all this stuff. Agatha looked at it with a happy sigh, carefully replacing the paper in the clear box. What would you like to do with this? What are my choices? Doreen asked dryly. I already have nightmares how the house is full of things that I don't know are valuable, and either give those away or lose or break the rest. Agatha said, I'd be happy to take this. I might have to do a bit more research to figure out its value, but I think it's certainly a lovely piece, and I'm sure it will sell. Good, Doreen said. Take it. And she laughed. Between all of you, I won't have much left in my house. No, one of the men beside Agatha said, you may not. On the other hand, your bank account will be very full. At that, the truth really sank in. You're right, she said quietly. And for that, I'm desperately thankful. It's been a very long year, and I can't begin to express how much I appreciate you guys doing this. Hey, it's business, Agatha said warmly. But these pieces go well beyond business. Collectors all over the world will stand in line to touch and to hold some of these. So you should feel good about that too. I have paperwork for you as well, once we get the other 2 paintings loaded. We'll go over every one of the items that I'm taking today, and I'll give you a receipt for them. Did you go through the whole house? Doreen asked. I thought so, Agatha said. But if you have a few moments, maybe we can take another look. My grandmother did say something about a painting in one of the closets, and I haven't found it yet, Doreen said sadly. Something about a woman in black, sitting on the edge of a chair. She said it was very ugly, but thought it was worth a lot of money. Agatha chuckled. If it's the one I know about, she's right. It's worth a ton of money. Doreen nodded. Why don't we go up and take a look? If we search every room carefully, we might find it. Then let's go. I haven't been in the basement either, Agatha said. I've seen them bring piece after piece out of there, but I have yet to have a look myself. Let's start there, Doreen said. If you have any interest in old kitchen stuff, that's probably the best place to go. Just then her phone beeped. Mac, sending her info on Crystal's case. Torn, she wanted to go inside and study what he'd sent, then caught sight of Agatha's curious gaze. She smiled, pocketed her phone, and said, Let's do another check of the house.